Shy girl receives a mystery. Valentine. The midnight dance turns friendship into first love. Hello and welcome to 80s Love Stories, where I, your favorite narrator, Christopher, bring you an exciting love story straight from the unforgettable 1980s. Get ready for a journey full of nostalgia and incredible twists. Today's story is truly remarkable, with an ending that's sure to touch your heart and leave you amazed. So, stay with me until the very last moment. I hope this experience is unforgettable for you, and may God bless you and your family. Now, let's get started. The familiar chime of the doorbell at Rick's Records barely registered as Jenny Thompson reorganized the new arrivals section for the third time that afternoon. February 1988 had brought in a wave of fresh vinyl, and the latest Def Leppard album wasn't going to alphabetize itself. She tucked a strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear, carefully sliding Hysteria between Debbie Gibson and Depeche Mode. I don't know. If you keep rearranging those, Rick's gonna dock your pay, a familiar voice said from behind her. Jenny didn't need to turn around to know it was Tim Parker, likely still in his royal blue blockbuster vest from his shift across the street. She could picture his thick-rimmed glasses and the way he always ran his hand through his perpetually messy dark hair when he was about to say something he thought was clever. At least I'm not stuck rewinding VHS tapes all day, Jenny shot back, finally turning to face him. As expected, Tim was wearing that stupid vest, but he'd paired it with a worn jean jacket that actually looked pretty cool. Not that she'd ever tell him that. Hey, someone's got to make sure Mrs. Henderson doesn't get charged extra for forgetting to be kind, rewind. Tim leaned against the counter, pulling something from his back pocket. Besides, I came bearing gifts. Jenny's eyes landed on the slightly crumpled envelope in his hand. The paper was an odd shade of cream, almost vintage-looking, with her name written in elegant calligraphy across the front. What's that? Found it taped to your locker this morning. Thought I'd play messenger. He held it out, then pulled it back just as she reached for it. Unless you want to trade it for round, say, 2 tokens at the arcade this weekend. Jenny snatched the envelope from his hand. In your dreams, Parker, don't you have some late fees to collect? The envelope felt heavy for its size, the paper thick and expensive. There was no return address, just her name, Jennifer Thompson, written in deep blue ink. As she turned it over, she noticed a small symbol embossed in the corner, a star inside a circle, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Well? Tim hadn't moved, his curiosity evident. Aren't you going to open it? Jenny slid her finger under the flap, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a single card, made of the same cream-colored stock as the envelope. The message was brief, written in the same elegant blue script. At the stroke of midnight on Valentine's Day, secrets long buried will find their way to light at last, as music plays and masks reveal what time betrays. Be there to witness what unfolds, when present mystery meets tales of old. It's an invitation, Jenny said, reading it again. To the Valentine's dance, I think. But who would— You're not the only one, Tim interrupted, pulling out another envelope from his jacket. Everyone got one. Sarah Collins was freaking out about it in chemistry. Apparently, they were all over school this morning. Jenny looked at the card again. The Valentine's dance was the biggest social event of the winter at Evergreen Valley High, second only to prom. This year was supposed to be special. The first dance in the newly renovated gymnasium, with some big surprise planned by the school board. But these invitations weren't the standard fluorescent paper announcements they usually got. Did you open yours? She asked, studying Tim's face. He shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. Same cryptic poem, though I think it's kind of weird that someone went to all this trouble. I mean, who uses calligraphy these days? The store's speakers crackled to life with the opening notes of Time After Time. Cyndi Lauper's voice filled the space between them as Jenny tucked the invitation into her worn denim jacket. Maybe it's just the dance committee being dramatic, she suggested, but something about the card felt different. Important. The star symbol caught her eye again, triggering a memory she couldn't quite place. Speaking of the dance, Tim started, suddenly very interested in the nearest album cover. I was thinking, since we both got these weird invitations, maybe we could— The door chime rang again, and Sarah Collins burst in, her camera bouncing against her vintage peasant blouse. Jenny? Tim? You're not going to believe what I just found in the library. Sarah's entrance scattered the moment like autumn leaves in a windstorm. Jenny watched Tim's question die on his lips as Sarah grabbed her arm, practically vibrating with excitement. I was researching for the yearbook, going through the old archives, and I found this. She pulled out a yellowed yearbook from her messenger bag, dated 1978. Sir, look at this photo from their Valentine's dance. The black and white image showed students in dated formal wear, dancing under decorations that seemed oddly familiar to the ones the committee had planned for this year's dance. But what caught Jenny's eye was the banner hanging in the background. In the corner was a symbol, a star inside a circle, identical to the one on their invitations. That's not all, Sarah continued, flipping to a marked page. Guy, there's this weird notation in the margin, something about a time capsule and a night of revelations. Sound familiar? Jenny felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the store's overactive air conditioning. She looked at Tim, who had gone oddly quiet, his eyes fixed on the yearbook photo. Guys, he said slowly, I think there's more to this dance than just punch-and-bad DJ music. Outside, the February sun was setting behind the mall's neon signs, casting long shadows through the store windows. Jenny felt like she was standing on the edge of something bigger than all of them, like the first drop on a roller coaster, just before the fall. The invitation seemed to burn in her pocket, its mystery calling to her like a siren song. Whatever was going to happen at the Valentine's dance, she knew one thing for certain. She had to be there to find out. As if reading her thoughts, Cyndi Lauper's voice faded out, replaced by the opening beats of "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This." Jenny couldn't help but wonder if some dreams were about to become reality, and if some secrets were better left in the past. Rick's voice called from the back room, reminding her she still had a job to do. Thompson, new shipment of Madonna needs pricing. Coming, she called back, but her mind was already miles away, lost in thoughts of masked dancers and midnight revelations. She caught Tim watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, somewhere between worry and wonder. The mystery was just beginning, and the Valentine's dance was only 10 days away. The week before the Valentine's dance passed in a blur of whispered theories and growing anticipation. Jenny spent her evenings at Sweet Dreams Ice Cream Parlor with Sarah and Tim, picking at sundaes while they analyzed every detail of the mysterious invitations. The vintage jukebox in the corner played Forever Young as they debated what the Night of Revelations might mean. Valentine's Day arrived wrapped in unusual warm weather for February. Jenny stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the pink and black lace dress she'd found at the vintage shop next to Rick's Records. Madonna's Open Your Heart played from her boombox while she tried to get her hair to achieve that perfect mix of styled and casual that seemed to come so easily to Molly Ringwald. Her wall-mounted phone rang, its spiral cord stretching across her poster-covered wall as she answered. Hello? Jenny! Tim's voice sounded different, nervous. I'm running late. My dad's car won't start, but I'll be there. Save me a dance. Sure, she replied, trying to ignore the slight disappointment in her stomach. They'd agreed to go together, as friends, of course, after that day in the record store. I'll see you there. The gymnasium had been transformed, gone were the basketball hoops and squeaky floors, replaced by flowing fabrics in deep blues and silvers. Stars hung from the ceiling, catching the light from rotating colored spots. The DJ booth was set up near the stage, currently playing Take My Breath Away, while couples swayed on the dance floor. But what caught Jenny's eye was the elaborate mask display near the entrance. Dozens of ornate masks lined the walls, each one unique, with a small note encouraging students to wear them as part of the evening's mystery theme. This is definitely not the dance committee's doing, Sarah whispered, adjusting her camera strap. These masks must have cost a fortune. Jenny picked up a delicate silver mask adorned with musical notes. As she tied it on, she noticed that same star-in-circle symbol subtly worked into its design. Look at this, she started to say, but Sarah had already disappeared into the crowd, camera raised to capture the evening. The music shifted to Time After Time, and Jenny felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned, expecting Tim, but instead found herself face to face with a stranger in a black mask that covered the upper half of his face. He wore a perfectly fitted dark suit that seemed too sophisticated for a high school student. "Would you dance with me?" His voice was soft but confident, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Before she could respond, he'd taken her hand, leading her onto the dance floor. His touch was gentle but sure, and as they began to move, Jenny felt like she'd stepped into a scene from one of those romantic movies she pretended not to love. "You're Jennifer Thompson," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you—" "I know a lot about you." He spun her gracefully. "I like how you spend your afternoons reorganizing vinyl at Rick's Records, how you have a secret weakness for power ballads, but tell everyone you prefer punk, how you've been trying to solve the mystery of these invitations." Jenny's heart raced. "Who are you?" He smiled mysteriously. "Someone who knows what really happened in 1978, someone who can help you understand what's happening now." The song changed to "Every Breath You Take," its haunting melody filling the space between them. As they danced, he began to speak, his words carefully chosen. 10 years ago, something was hidden in this school, something that could change everything. The time capsule everyone thinks was sealed in the cornerstone, that's not where it really is. The truth is hidden somewhere else, waiting to be found. "What's in it?" Jenny asked, drawn into his words despite her skepticism. "Find the yearbook from 1978, the real one, not the copy in the library. Look for the pages that aren't there anymore, but be careful who you trust with what you find." Across the gym, Jenny caught a glimpse of Tim finally arriving, still adjusting his tie. Their eyes met just as the masked stranger pulled her closer, whispering in her ear, "Meet me at midnight by the old trophy case. I'll show you where to start looking." The song ended, and before Jenny could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. She stood alone on the dance floor, her head spinning with questions. "Jenny?" Tim made his way over, slightly out of breath. "Sorry I'm late. My dad had to—" He stopped, noticing her expression. "What's wrong? Who was that guy?" "I'm not sure," she said slowly, touching the mask she still wore. "But I think he knows something about those invitations, and about whatever happened here in 1978. Tim's face darkened slightly. "You can't seriously believe some random guy in a mask. This whole thing is probably just an elaborate prank." "Then why did everyone get those invitations? Why does he know about the time capsule?" Jenny countered. She checked her watch, 11:15 p.m. "And I'm going to find out more at midnight." "Jenny, wait." Tim caught her arm. "Something about this doesn't feel right. Let me help you look into it. We can go through the yearbooks together, try to figure it out safely." She hesitated. Tim had been her best friend since middle school. He'd always looked out for her, always been there, but something about the masked stranger's words pulled at her, promising answers to questions she hadn't even known to ask. "The next dance is yours," she promised Tim. "But at midnight, I have to know what he has to show me." The DJ switched to "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This" as Sarah reappeared, excitement written all over her face. "You guys won't believe what I just found in my latest photos," she said, pulling out her camera. "Look at this shot of the mask display. When the flash hit it just right." She pointed to something in the background of the image, barely visible. Jenny and Tim leaned in closer. There, reflected in one of the mirrors behind the masks, was a figure watching the dance. But it wasn't a student or a teacher. It was someone older, someone who shouldn't have been there at all. And around their neck hung a key with a familiar symbol, a star inside a circle. The clock on the gym wall ticked steadily toward midnight, each second bringing them closer to whatever revelations this night had in store. Jenny touched the silver mask again, wondering if she was ready for what she might discover. Tim watched her with poorly concealed concern, while Sarah bounced excitedly between them, theorizing about their discovery. But Jenny's thoughts kept returning to the mysterious dancer and his promise of answers. The night was far from over, and the biggest mysteries were still to come. The old trophy case stood at the end of the darkened hallway, its glass reflecting the distant colored lights from the gymnasium. Jenny checked her digital watch, 11:58 p.m. The synthesizer beats of "Somebody's Watching Me" drifted through the corridor, an eerily appropriate soundtrack for the moment. "This is crazy," Tim whispered beside her. Despite her protests, he'd refused to let her meet the masked stranger alone. "We should be in there dancing to Tears for Fears like normal people." "Since when have we been normal?" Jenny adjusted her mask, still scanning the shadows. The silver musical notes caught the dim light, creating tiny dancing patterns on the wall. 11:59 p.m. "You don't have to stay," she told Tim, even though part of her was glad he was there. "Right, because leaving my best friend alone in a dark hallway with some mysterious masked guy is totally what Ferris Bueller would do." His attempt at humor couldn't quite hide the concern in his voice. Midnight struck, and the distant sound of True by Spandau Ballet began to play, but the masked stranger didn't appear. Instead, they heard footsteps, coming from the direction of the library. "Quick!" Tim pulled Jenny behind a display of old sports equipment. They crouched together, hearts racing as the footsteps grew closer. A beam from a flashlight swept the hallway. Through a gap in their hiding spot, Jenny could see Principal Harrison walking slowly past, stopping at the trophy case. He seemed to be looking for something, muttering under his breath. "It has to be here somewhere," they heard him say. After all these years, the principal pulled something from his pocket, a key with the now familiar star and circle symbol. But before he could use it, another sound made him freeze. More footsteps, these ones hurried, approaching from the gym. Harrison quickly pocketed the key and turned, his flashlight beam finding Sarah as she rushed around the corner, camera in hand. "Miss Collins, what are you doing out here?" "Oh, Principal Harrison." Sarah clutched her camera tighter. "I was just getting some atmospheric shots for the yearbook. The lighting in the hallway is really interesting with the dance lights and everything." Harrison's posture relaxed slightly, but his voice remained stern. "The dance is in the gymnasium, young lady. These halls are off limits tonight." "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." Sarah backed away, but Jenny knew that look in her friend's eye. She'd seen something worth investigating. After they were both gone, Jenny and Tim emerged from their hiding spot. "Okay, that was weird," Tim admitted. "Why would Harrison be sneaking around his own school at midnight?" Jenny approached the trophy case, studying it carefully. He was looking for something specific. "Did you see that key?" "Yeah, with that same symbol that's everywhere lately." Tim ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit she'd always found endearing. "Jenny, maybe we should tell someone about all this. My dad knows some people at the school board." "Not yet." Jenny pressed her face close to the glass, trying to see what Harrison had been so interested in. "First, we need to figure out what's really going on." The next morning found them at the Millennium Mall, huddled in a corner booth at the food court. Sarah had insisted on meeting there, saying she had something important to show them. "Look at this." She spread several photographs across the table, nearly knocking over Tim's orange Julius. "I developed these last night after the dance." The photos showed the hallway by the trophy case, taken at different times throughout the evening. But what caught Jenny's eye was a shadow in one of them, a tall figure wearing what looked like the same mask as her mystery dancer. "That's not all," Sarah continued, pulling out the 1978 yearbook she'd borrowed from the library. "Remember how that guy told you to look for missing pages? Well, look at this." She opened the book to the Valentine's dance section. The binding showed clear signs of tampering. Several pages had been carefully removed. "But I found this stuck between other pages." She pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. It was a photograph, showing a group of students standing in front of the same trophy case. They were all wearing masks, and in the center was a key being passed between two people. Jenny turned the photo over. On the back was written, "The truth stays sealed until the right time. Guard it well." "Check out the date." Sarah pointed to the corner of the photo. "February 14th, 1978, exactly 10 years ago." Tim leaned back, absently stirring his drink. "So whatever happened back then, whatever's hidden in that time capsule, it's all connected to tonight's dance." "And Principal Harrison knows something about it," Jenny added. She couldn't stop staring at the old photo. Something about one of the masked figures seemed familiar, but she couldn't place why. The mall's speakers played time after time overhead, and Jenny suddenly remembered something else from the dance. The music. She sat up straighter. Every song that played while we were in that hallway, they were all from 1978 originally. Even the ones we heard were cover versions. "That can't be a coincidence," Sarah agreed, already making notes in her ever-present journal. Tim remained skeptical. "But what does it all mean? Why all the secrecy over a time capsule?" "Because," Jenny said slowly. "I don't think it's just a time capsule." The masked stranger said it could change everything. "And look at how many people seem to be involved in keeping it hidden." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the arcade. A small crowd had gathered around the new Space Ace cabinet, where someone was apparently breaking the high-score record. Jenny caught a glimpse of the player through the crowd, and her heart skipped. He was wearing a Letterman jacket she didn't recognize, but his profile, it looked just like her mystery dancer. She stood up quickly. "I'll be right back." "Jenny, wait," Tim started to say, but she was already moving toward the arcade. By the time she pushed through the crowd, the game was over. The high-score screen blinked, asking for initials. The player entered DM and turned away from the machine. Their eyes met briefly before he disappeared into the Saturday Mall crowd. But it was enough for Jenny to see that same mysterious smile from the dance. She returned to the table, where Tim and Sarah were arguing about whether to tell someone what they'd discovered. "He was here," Jenny announced, cutting through their debate. "The masked stranger. And I think I might know how to find out who he really is." Tim's expression darkened slightly. "Jenny, this is getting dangerous. We don't know what we're dealing with." "That's exactly why we need to figure it out," she countered. "And I know where to start looking." She pulled out the old photograph again, studying the faces hidden behind their masks. "We need to find out who these students were in 1978, and I bet the answers are in the complete yearbook, the real one. Which Principal Harrison probably has locked away somewhere," Sarah added excitedly. Tim looked between them, concern evident behind his glasses. "You're not seriously suggesting we break into the principal's office?" Jenny met his gaze steadily. "No, but I know somewhere else we might find answers." She turned to Sarah. "Doesn't your mom work at the town library in the archives?" Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. "And they keep copies of all local records, including school documents." "Exactly." Jenny stood up, suddenly energized. "Who's up for a little weekend research?" As they gathered their things, Jenny noticed Tim watching her with an unreadable expression. She knew he was worried about her growing obsession with the mystery, but she also saw something else in his eyes, something that made her heart flutter in a way she wasn't quite ready to examine. The mall's radio switched to "Every Breath You Take" as they headed for the exit, past stores displaying the latest Swatch watches and acid-wash jeans. Jenny touched the silver mask she'd kept from the dance, now safely tucked in her purse. Whatever secrets lay hidden in their school's past, she was getting closer to uncovering them, but with each answer came new questions, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the biggest revelations were still to come. The weekend passed in a blur of microfiche readers and dusty archives at the town library. Jenny's eyes burned from staring at old newspaper clippings, while the steady click-whir of Sarah's mother's ancient copy machine provided a monotonous soundtrack to their investigation. "Got something?" Sarah's excited whisper cut through the library silence. She held up a yellowed newspaper from 1978. The headline read, "Local Teens' Discovery Raises Questions About Town's History." Tim leaned over Jenny's shoulder to read, his breath warm against her neck. She tried to ignore the way her pulse quickened at his proximity. "The article's mostly damaged," Sarah continued, "but look at this photo." The grainy image showed a teenage boy holding what appeared to be an old document. Behind him stood a younger version of Principal Harrison, looking considerably less grey but wearing the same stern expression they knew so well. "Wait a minute." Jenny grabbed her backpack, pulling out the dance photo they'd found. Placing them side by side, the resemblance was unmistakable. The boy in the newspaper was one of the masked figures. "His name's David Mitchell," Tim read from the caption. "I says here he was a junior at Evergreen Valley High when he made some kind of historical discovery during a school renovation project." "David Mitchell," Jenny repeated softly. "DM, the same initials from the arcade." The library's overhead speakers began playing a Musak version of Time After Time, making all three of them look up. These coincidences were getting harder to ignore. "There's more," Sarah said, shuffling through her photocopies. "I found the school board minutes from that year. They voted to create a special time capsule to commemorate the discovery, but get this, there are two different records about where it was sealed. One says the cornerstone, the other mentions something about securing it in accordance with the Mitchell Protocol. The Mitchell Protocol? Tim adjusted his glasses. That sounds more like a spy movie than a high school time capsule. Jenny was about to respond when she noticed someone watching them from between the bookshelves, someone wearing a familiar Letterman jacket, but before she could point him out, he disappeared. We need to go to the source, she decided. If David Mitchell was a junior in '78, he'd be what, 27 now? He might still live in town. Tim's face clouded. Trace Jenny, we can't just track down some stranger because of a decade-old newspaper article. Besides, if he's the one who's been leaving clues and showing up in masks, why not just tell us what's going on? Maybe he's testing us, she suggested, making sure we can handle whatever this secret is. Or maybe, Tim's voice had an edge she'd never heard before, he's just some creep who gets his kicks messing with high school students. Did you ever think of that? The tension that had been building between them finally crackled into the open. Jenny stood up, gathering her things. I thought you wanted to help solve this mystery. I wanted to help you, Tim shot back. But you're so caught up in this mysterious dancer that you can't see how dangerous this is getting. Guys, Sarah interrupted, pointing to something on the microfiche screen. I need to see this. It was another article, dated a week after the first. The headline read, Local Teen Missing After School Dance. The photo showed David Mitchell again, but this time the article was about his unexplained disappearance following a Valentine's dance. He vanished right after making his discovery, Sarah read. Never showed up for the time capsule sealing ceremony. Some people thought he ran away. Others suspected. Her voice trailed off. I suspected what? Jenny pressed. That he was silenced. A new voice answered. All three spun around to find an older woman standing behind them. Her librarian's badge read, Mrs. Mitchell. You're David's mother, Jenny realized. The woman nodded, her eyes fixed on the old photographs spread across their table. I've been watching you three dig through these old records, wondering if you'd find what David found. She touched the star and circle symbol on one of the documents, wondering if you'd understand what it means. What did happen to your son? Tim asked, his earlier anger forgotten in the face of this new development. Mrs. Mitchell smiled sadly. That's not the right question. The right question is, what did he find in that school? And why did so many people want to keep it hidden? Before they could press her further, the library's closing announcement came over the speakers. Mrs. Mitchell straightened up. If you really want answers, there's something you should see. Meet me at the Starlight Drive-In tomorrow night. I'll be in the back row watching The Breakfast Club. She turned to leave, then paused. And be careful who you trust. Not everyone wants the truth to come out, even after all these years. After she left, the three friends sat in stunned silence, broken only by the Musak version of Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, playing overhead. Well, Sarah finally said, I guess we're going to the drive-in. Tim ran a hand through his hair. This is crazy. We're actually going to meet some stranger at a drive-in theater to learn about a decades-old mystery. You don't have to come, Jenny said softly, still hurt from their earlier argument. Their eyes met across the table, and Jenny saw the conflict in his expression. Finally, he sighed, like I'd let you go alone. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. Just be careful, okay? I couldn't handle it if anything happened to you. Something in his tone made Jenny's heart skip. For a moment, the mystery of David Mitchell and the time capsule seemed far less important than the way Tim was looking at her. But the moment passed as Sarah began gathering their research, talking excitedly about what Mrs. Mitchell might reveal. Jenny pushed her confused feelings aside, focusing on the task at hand. As they left the library, the setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Jenny's hand brushed Tim's as they walked, and neither pulled away immediately. Tomorrow would bring more answers, but for now, she was grateful for her friend's presence, especially Tim's, despite their disagreement. The mystery was deepening, and with it, the complicated feelings she was trying so hard to ignore. Both seemed to be heading toward a revelation she wasn't sure she was ready for. The Starlight Drive-In's neon sign cast a blue glow over the rows of parked cars. Jenny sat in the passenger seat of Tim's father's Volvo, trying not to think about how this would feel like a date under different circumstances. Sarah sprawled across the back seat, munching popcorn and adjusting her radio to the drive-in's frequency. On the massive screen, the Breakfast Club was just starting. The familiar opening notes of "Don't You Forget About Me" crackled through the car's speakers. "Back row," she said, Tim murmured, carefully navigating between the cars. His hand brushed Jenny's as he shifted gears, and she felt that now familiar flutter in her stomach. They found Mrs. Mitchell's car easily enough, a well-maintained 1968 Mustang, cherry red under the starlight. She motioned for them to park next to her. "I'm glad you came," she said after they'd settled into lawn chairs between the cars. "There's something you need to see." She opened an old leather briefcase. These belonged to David. She handed Jenny a worn journal, its pages filled with neat handwriting and detailed sketches. Many showed the same star and circle symbol they'd been seeing everywhere. When David was working on the school renovation project, Mrs. Mitchell explained, he found something in the old wing, something that changed everything. What was it? Sarah leaned forward eagerly. Evidence. Mrs. Mitchell's voice dropped. Evidence that the school was built on top of something else, something important. The original town hall from the 1800s. On screen, Claire was sharing her lipstick trick with Allison. The scene's soft lighting mixed with the drive-in's ambient glow, creating shadows that danced across their faces. "But why would that matter?" Tim asked, unconsciously moving closer to Jenny as the evening air grew cooler. "Because of what was stored there." Mrs. Mitchell pulled out an old photograph. The original town charter and land grants, documents that proved certain prominent families hadn't acquired their land legally, documents that could change who owned half the town. Jenny flipped through David's journal, finding detailed maps of the school's foundation. He found these documents. He found where they were hidden, but before he could retrieve them, others found out what he'd discovered. Mrs. Mitchell's hands trembled slightly. The night of the Valentine's dance, David planned to get the documents. He had help, other students who believed in doing what was right. They created a diversion with masks and mystery. But he never got the chance, Jenny finished, understanding dawning. That's why he disappeared. Not disappeared, came a new voice from the shadows. Just went into hiding. They all turned to see a man step into the light between the cars. He wore a Letterman jacket and a familiar, mysterious smile. "David!" Mrs. Mitchell's voice cracked as she stood. "Hi, Mum," he said softly. "So I think it's finally time." Jenny's heart raced as she recognized him, the masked dancer, the arcade player, the figure who'd been watching them all along. But before anyone could speak, another car pulled up behind them. Principal Harrison stepped out, his face grim in the reflected light from the movie screen. "I thought I might find you all here," he said, holding up a key with the star and circle symbol, "and I think it's time we all had a talk about what really happened in 1978. The next hour passed in a blur of revelations. Harrison, as it turned out, had been trying to protect the documents all along, working with David to keep them safe until the statute of limitations on the land fraud expired. "Which it did last month," David explained. "That's why I came back, why I needed to find someone brave enough to help uncover the truth." He looked at Jenny. "Oh, someone who wouldn't give up on a mystery, no matter what." Jenny felt Tim tense beside her. On screen, John Bender was raising his fist in triumph as Simple Minds played again. "The time capsule," Sarah said suddenly. "It's not in the cornerstone at all, is it?" Harrison shook his head. "It's in a vault beneath the trophy case. The real documents are safe inside, along with proof of what really happened." He held out the key. "Would you like to see?" Jenny reached for the key, but Tim caught her hand. "Wait." He turned to David. "Why all the secrecy? The masks, the dance, the clues?" "Because some people are still trying to keep the truth hidden," David answered. "I had to be sure you could be trusted, all of you." His eyes lingered on Jenny. "And I had to make sure you understood what was at stake." "What happens now?" Jenny asked, acutely aware that Tim hadn't let go of her hand. "Now," Harrison said, "we make things right. But first," he looked at his watch, "I believe you all have somewhere to be." Jenny had almost forgotten. Tomorrow was the annual Sweethearts Skate at the roller rink, a tradition as old as the school itself. She'd been planning to go with Tim and Sarah, before all this mystery began. The documents have waited this long, David smiled. They can wait one more night. As they prepared to leave, David pulled Jenny aside. "I'm sorry if I made things complicated for you," he said softly, glancing at Tim. "But sometimes the biggest revelations aren't about hidden documents or town secrets." Jenny felt her cheeks flush, understanding his meaning. Behind them, Tim was trying very hard to look like he wasn't watching them. "The truth has a way of coming out," David continued, "in all sorts of ways." As they drove home, the car's drive played on the radio. Sarah had fallen asleep in the back seat, leaving Jenny and Tim in comfortable silence. "I'm sorry I doubted you," Tim finally said. "About all of this." "It's okay," Jenny replied. "You were just trying to protect me." Their eyes met briefly in the darkness of the car, and Jenny felt something shift between them, like a mask finally slipping away to reveal what had been there all along. Tomorrow, they would uncover the last pieces of the mystery. But tonight, driving through the quiet streets of their town, Jenny realized some truths had been right in front of her the whole time. She just hadn't been ready to see them without the mask. The Roller Kingdom's neon sign buzzed and flickered against the twilight sky, casting alternating pink and blue shadows across the parking lot. Jenny sat in her car, watching teenagers file into the rink for the Sweetheart Skate. The latest Debbie Gibson song drifting out whenever the doors opened. She touched the key Harrison had given them, now hanging around her neck on a silver chain. In just a few hours, they would finally uncover what lay hidden beneath the trophy case. But first, she had a promise to keep. The evening had barely begun when Tim's familiar figure appeared beside her car window, his hand raised to knock. He wore a navy blue sweater she'd never seen before, and his usually messy hair was actually combed. "You came," he said, sounding relieved. "I promised, didn't I?" She stepped out, smoothing her favorite denim skirt. "Plus, Sarah would kill us both if we missed this." Inside, the rink was transformed. Heart-shaped balloons floated near the ceiling, and strings of white lights created a twinkling canopy above the polished wooden floor. The DJ booth was set up near the snack bar, currently playing Forever Young, while skaters circled the rink. Sarah waved from the rental counter, already lacing up her skates. "About time. I was beginning to think you'd both bailed to go solve more mysteries." As they got their skates, Jenny noticed Tim watching her with an odd expression. "What?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "It's just different seeing you without all the mystery and danger." "Missing the excitement already," she teased. "Actually," he began, but was interrupted by a new song starting. Time after time, and Sarah practically dragging them onto the rink. The first few laps were wobbly as they found their rhythm. Jenny hadn't skated since last summer, but muscle memory soon took over. She reached for Tim's hand automatically when he stumbled, their fingers intertwining with familiar ease. "So," Sarah said, skating backwards to face them, "are we going to talk about what happens after tonight, when everyone finds out about the documents?" Jenny thought about David's words from the drive-in, about truth having a way of coming out. Harrison said some people might try to stop us. Let them try. Tim's grip on her hand tightened slightly. "We've come too far to back down now." They skated in comfortable silence for a while, the music shifting to Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. Jenny found herself studying Tim's profile in the changing lights, wondering when her best friend had become something more. The moment was broken by a commotion near the entrance. Principal Harrison burst in, looking unusually disheveled. "Someone broke into the school," he announced as they skated over. "The trophy case. They're trying to get to the vault." Jenny's hand flew to the key around her neck. "But how did they know?" "It doesn't matter," Tim said firmly. "We have to get there first." They changed back into their shoes in record time, leaving Sarah to cover for them with their parents. The drive to school was tense, broken only by the sound of Tears for Fears on the radio. The school parking lot was empty, except for Harrison's car and an unfamiliar van. As they approached the entrance, they could see lights moving inside. "Wait!" Tim caught Jenny's arm before she could rush in. "We need a plan." But Jenny was already pulling out her Walkman. "I have one. Remember what David said about the Valentine's dance, about creating a diversion?" Understanding dawned on Tim's face. The masks. They found the box of masks still stored in the drama department's prop room. Jenny chose her silver musical note mask, while Tim picked a simple black one. "Ready," she whispered. He reached for her hand again. Together. They crept toward the trophy case, where shadows moved in the beam of a flashlight. Two figures were attempting to pry open the case itself, not knowing about the vault beneath. Jenny pressed play on her Walkman, and the opening notes of "Every Breath You Take" echoed through the hallway speakers. She'd connected it to the school's audio system, just like she'd learned working sound for the drama club. The intruders spun around, startled by the music and the sight of two masked figures emerging from the shadows. "Step away from the case," Harrison's voice boomed from behind them. The principal stood at the end of the hall, David Mitchell beside him. What happened next was chaos. The intruders tried to run, only to find their path blocked by newly arrived police officers. Sarah's quick thinking had led her to call them. As the police led the men away, revealed to be lawyers working for one of the town's prominent families, Jenny felt the weight of the past weeks lifting. But something else was taking its place, something that made her pulse race whenever she looked at Tim. They stood together in the now quiet hallway, still wearing their masks, as the last notes of the song faded away. "I guess we make a pretty good team," Tim said softly. "We always have." Jenny turned to face him, reaching up to remove his mask. Her fingers trembled slightly as they brushed his face. He caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. "Jenny, But before he could finish, David and Harrison returned, ready to finally open the vault and reveal its secrets. The mystery was about to be solved, but Jenny found herself almost wishing they could stay in this moment a little longer. In the dim light of the hallway, with Tim looking at her like she was the only mystery worth solving, she realized that some revelations didn't need words. They had one more task to complete, one more secret to uncover. But the biggest discovery of the night had nothing to do with hidden documents or town histories. It was the truth that had been right beside her all along, wearing a black mask and holding her hand like he never wanted to let go. The vault beneath the trophy case opened with a soft click that seemed to echo through the empty hallway. Jenny's hand trembled slightly as she turned the key, feeling Tim's steady presence beside her. Harrison and David stood back, their faces solemn in the dim light. Inside lay a metal box, its surface etched with the now familiar star and circle symbol. Alongside it were stacks of yellowed documents, the original town charter and land grants, preserved perfectly after all these years. "All this time," Jenny breathed, "it was right here under our feet." The documents revealed exactly what David had discovered a decade ago, evidence of land theft and fraud that had shaped their town's history. But more than that, they found something unexpected, a record of those who had tried to expose the truth over the years, generation after generation. "You weren't the first," David explained, showing them a list of names. "Every decade or so, someone would discover part of the truth. The star and circle became their symbol, a way to recognize each other." "But why the Valentine's dance?" Tim asked, still holding Jenny's hand. "Why all the mystery?" Harrison smiled. "Because that's when it all started. February 14th, 1878, the night the original documents were hidden to keep them safe. Every 100 years, there's a chance to make things right. And now," Jenny looked at the papers spread before them. "Now," David said, "we finish what was started. But first," he pulled something else from the vault, an old vinyl record in a plain white sleeve. "I believe we have one more tradition to uphold." 20 minutes later, they stood in the gymnasium. David had connected a turntable to the sound system, and the first crackle of needle on vinyl filled the space. The opening notes of "Time After Time" floated through the air, but this was different. It was the original 1878 waltz that Cyndi Lauper had unknowingly echoed a century later. Every Valentine's dance, David explained, they played this song, a reminder of what was hidden and what could be revealed. Jenny and Tim stood in the middle of the empty gym, still wearing their masks, as the melody swirled around them. Without a word, Tim held out his hand. "May I have this dance?" Jenny took his hand, letting him pull her close. As they swayed to the century-old tune, she finally understood what David had meant about some truths taking time to reveal themselves. "You know," Tim said softly, I've been trying to tell you something for weeks now. Even before the mysterious masked dancer, Jenny teased, but her heart was racing. Way before. He took a deep breath. Jenny, But she was already reaching up, gently removing his mask. In the soft light filtering through the gym windows, she could see every emotion he'd been trying to hide. Every worried glance, every protective gesture, every moment of jealousy he'd tried to disguise. "I know," she whispered. "I think I've always known." The music swelled around them as Tim slowly reached for her mask. His fingers brushed her cheek as he lifted it away, and Jenny felt the last barrier between them dissolve. "It was always you," she said. "Even when I was caught up in the mystery, even when I was dancing with a stranger. It was always you I wanted to solve the mystery with." Tim's smile was brighter than any neon sign, warmer than any summer night at the drive-in. "We did make a pretty good team." "Make?" Jenny raised an eyebrow. "Say past tense." "Well," he leaned closer, "I was hoping we might try solving some different mysteries together." "What did you have in mind?" Instead of answering, Tim closed the distance between them. His kiss was gentle, uncertain at first, then growing more confident as Jenny responded. It was nothing like the kisses in the movies they watched at the Starlight. It was better, because it was real, because it was them. The song ended, its final notes fading into the quiet of the gym, but Tim and Jenny kept dancing to their own music, their masks forgotten on the floor beside them. Later that night, they all gathered at Sweet Dreams Ice Cream Parlor to celebrate. Sarah took photos while David and Harrison explained their plans to make the documents public. The truth would finally come out, and their town would never be quite the same. But as Jenny shared a sundae with Tim, their feet tangled together under the booth, she knew some changes were worth waiting for. The mystery that had brought them together had been solved, but the biggest adventure was just beginning. The jukebox played Sweet Dreams Are Made of This as they sat there, surrounded by friends old and new, the weight of secrets finally lifted. Outside, the neon sign still buzzed against the night sky, and somewhere in the distance, a car radio played the latest hit by the Bangles. It was 1988 and everything was possible. The truth was out, justice would be served, and love, real, honest, unmasked love, had finally found its way home. Jenny looked at Tim, who was trying to explain something about computers to David, his hand still entwined with hers under the table. He caught her watching and smiled, that same smile she'd known for years but was only now seeing clearly. Some mysteries took time to solve. Some truths had to be uncovered slowly, piece by piece, like a melody building to its chorus. But when all the masks came off, when all the secrets were revealed, what remained was something better than any mystery. The simple, extraordinary truth of two hearts finding their way to each other. No masks required. Thank you for watching today's story. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to relive the magic of the 80s every day with our heartfelt stories. May God bless you and your family, and don't forget to click on the video popping up on the screen right now. It's another totally rad story you won't want to miss. See you in the next video, and stay awesome.